Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deeper Dive podcast. After a long, cold winter, we're back at the mic.
We forgot how to operate the equipment. I had amnesia, and Alex was kidnapped by pirates, but we're back.
Well, the sermon series that we missed, because I think we missed multiple.
It was like 3.
Was called Missing Piece, so we wanted to see if we were the missing piece in your life today.
That's awesome. Why didn't I come up with things like that?
Well, it's not your show. You're just a guest here.
Yes,
remember that. All right, so let's jump right into it. And I have had 2 questions that have been waiting from the same person for so incredibly long. And I really, really apologize to this question asker. And I appreciate you sending this in. I'm sorry this took so long to get to. But let's start with question number 1. To Kurt.
Okay.
I'm just going to read verbatim.
Well, I have not heard this prior, so if I stumble all over myself, I apologize.
False expectations. Too many times I do get stressed out or have a bad attitude towards going somewhere or doing something. How do I go about changing my attitude towards these things so I don't fall into the false expectations trap?
Wow. Well, it depends. What are you expecting? Are you like going on a date, this vacation, a family reunion? There's different expectations for different things.
I'm gonna have to read into this one here, but let's keep it to like, you know what? It's an event that's going to take up my Saturday evening when I really just wanted to be at home with my feet up, maybe in front of the TV or the
Was
fire.
Was this question by Balix Erlin by chance?
No. Balix has not written it in a while.
Okay, I just was wondering. He always has such good questions.
Let's just say I don't want to go to this family event on a Saturday night, and so rather than be, while I'm there, I'm trying to have a happy heart.
Well, it's kind of funny because off mic we were talking about certain characteristics that we carry with us that are important that aren't taught anymore. We have replaced duty with guilt, and in some cases we have duties that we perform, and back in the day, and I'm talking about like 1967. No, farther back than that, more like 1767. There was a sense of duty that you carried with you as you performed certain tasks as required. And it was in the performance that you found I don't want to say the word comfort. In the performance, you found the satisfaction. There are some things that we do and we know we're performing our duty. If it's a family-oriented thing, in some community events, if you don't, you have to learn to develop a satisfaction for completion of the duty that you're called to do. It's an honorable thing, and we've lost that. And because we just feel guilty instead of satisfied for what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't like it.
No.
I'm going to start calling you Oswald Chambers.
Oh, well, thank you. That's one of the highest compliments
I don't want to change. I don't want to change my attitude.
Well, you just, dang it, Alex. It's unfortunately, we have rules that we have to play. And you can either accept your place or you can chafe against it. I like to talk hills sometimes.
Really held that one up.
Yeah, I did.
What's interesting about that is kind of what I'm hearing is in a day and age where everyone's pushed to be successful and get stuff done, you know, progress looks like, well, look over there, look at what I built, or look at what I cleaned, or what I did, and then and only then can you rest. But you're saying just by performing the duties that we're obligated to, we should be able to look back at ourselves at the end of the day and said, I did what I should have done today.
Yes.
Whether I liked it or not.
It was my duty to show up, and I completed my duty.
Was it your duty to show up and be joyful? or is it your duty to show up and be there?
Well, it's not your. Let me tell you what it's not. It's not your duty to show up and whine.
Okay, that's easier to understand.
No one says you have to enjoy it, but don't ruin it, or don't.
That's fair.
Don't make it bad for everyone else. I just believe that strongly. I'm known too many people, and it's partially a selfishness on all of our parts that we get that way sometime, where we don't like being in a place and we kind of drag down the room for everyone else by letting them know. But what does that accomplish? Does anyone think more of you? We don't think that enough. We always think, and my sermon this week is about complaining, and we don't think, gee, I'm sure that person thinks more of me because I'm complaining so much.
That's a good point.
No one thinks that.
Yeah. I'll have to add that to our get a tattoo list.
Yeah.
Put that one on my arm so I remember it.
Good. Another reason to mark yourself up.
Okay, so second question.
Okay.
Same caller. This actually plays into...
Okay, Balix.
This plays into, I think it does, into your sermon. So maybe,
okay.
Maybe we were doing God's will by being lazy and not doing the podcast for 3 months so that we could tie this question to the sermon. You're welcome, everyone. Okay. Slowing myself down is kind of the title to the question, with a question mark at the end of it. Slowing myself down? Like that.
Okay.
I'm a getter-doner. If there's something to do, I'm all about getting it done. How do I know if I am to slow down rather than just getting it done, so that I'm doing things at God's pace rather than my own?
Well, I think in this case it really depends on how things are affecting others. It's very admirable to take care of tasks that are in front of you, and that's what most of us do. It's not a... there's too many people, and I on some occasions, that put off what needs to be done. But if you're talking about relationships and how that affects them sometimes, I think the main thing is as far as it depends on you, and this is very Pauline, you take care of stuff. But if you find yourself in mission creep where you're taking care of other people's stuff, then I would pull back. Now, if the question, taking down a couple of other layers, because I'm always overthinking, is how do I not overbook my day because I'm completing so many tasks? I've been told that it's simple enough to schedule a reasonable amount of time for task doing with your significant other or with a mentor, and then just take care of that and nothing more. Don't overdo. Because I do know people that are workaholics and spend too much time taking care of stuff, and they miss life while it's going on. So, once again, I appreciate your question. I'm sorry if that was only half an answer for 2 questions. Unless you can reinterpret for me.
No, I'm not going to jump any further.
Okay.
I have a feeling you hit it. I liked it. Okay. April 11th, 2021 sermon was Enough of the Bad News.
Yes! Enough already!
Sermon series, Stay Positive. Gospel reading was from Romans, chapter 8, Kurt's favorite chapter. And
it is my favorite chapter.
The chapter and verse that is on the page I was taking notes on again that day.
It is a movement of the Holy Spirit.
Isn't that weird?
Yes.
Okay. So you were talking about living a life that expresses what you believe. And you kind of phrased it almost like back to the questions you were answering. It's our duty to live a life that expresses what we believe.
Our duty ties in again.
Yeah.
My gosh.
And that's because other people, and especially non-believers, will see that.
Yes.
And then see a reason for why you're living what you believe.
If you were an unbeliever and you wanted to follow Jesus, who would you look at to be the example for what you would point at and say, yeah, that's what I want to be? That's what we're trying to be. You have to have that mindset because, as I probably explained poorly in my sermon, too many people think, well, I don't know how to share the gospel. I'm not versed in the Bible. And my concern for us as a faith-filled people and people who are trying to share the gospel is we're too myopic in what that's supposed to look at. And it's key to try and be holy. And holiness is supposed to give us joy and live a life of joy. And in so doing that, people want to be a part of that. When we think of the Pilgrims, we think of these austere, unhappy, cold-hearted folks. What we don't know about history, that I do because I read this stuff, is, this was a growing concern at the time. These people weren't miserable. They were actually joy-filled. But we look at their lives from the outside and think, oh, they must be miserable because they didn't do all of the things that we get to do.
Yeah, they didn't have an iPhone.
Yeah, they didn't dance, so they can't have fun. They didn't enjoy our types of music, and their lives were miserable. Those are outside perspectives. If you read actual people who were pilgrims or Puritans, it's a different ball game. And so, live your life as a person that people would want to have a piece of whatever you're doing.
Not that this matters, and I'm going to accept what you said there.
Oh, I thank you.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to do it my best.
Yeah, sure.
But there was the cynic in me was sitting in the pews when you said that, and I was just like, people won't think to themselves, oh, those Christians are being Christians or being loving is what I should say. Those Christians aren't being loving because they're Christians. Those Christians are being loving because their life's easier, or they've got it made for whatever reason, or they're fake. It's just like
that's
the cynic in me just was like,
when I was in high school, and I'm giving away a sermon illustration again.
When I was in the Army,
there was a couple of people. Yeah, this is a high school, and I was a complete dud. And there was a couple of people in class that I thought they didn't follow the mold of, they weren't. They were nice kids, and they seemed very happy, and I couldn't understand how they didn't fit into one of the cliques that you were supposed to fit into at the time and still look contented. Now, it turns out they were Mormon. And that interested me for a moment, thinking that, wow, they got something that I don't have that I want. And luckily, I didn't go down that path. But it was interesting. And the conflicts that went inside. And like I said, I was a complete ne'er-do-well, and it spoke to me. And people may say that they don't, oh, that's a bunch of hooey. But deep down, they're like, I wish it was me. And I was one of those that was like that.
If you're really exuding pure joy, it's gonna
be contagious. It's gonna be contagious. And what do you not have to be joyful about? That's oh boy. That's why this is a 6-week long series. Be positive.
Yeah. So the verse that was at the bottom of my page was Romans 8, which we were in, but it was a little further in, 39, verse 39. Nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God.
That's going to be on my tombstone.
What do you have to be negative about then?
Neither fire, nor sword, nor angels, nor demons, or things above or below, neither height nor depth. Nothing will separate us from the love of God. That's going to be Kurt Nichols, 1961 to 2061.
I like that, but I just want you to know that you have less control over what's going to be on your tombstone than other people sitting in this room. I'm just saying.
Well, I better get it carved out now.
You have the least control over that.
Yes, that's true.
Chloe and Nathan and I will put whatever we want on your...
Dang it.
All right, so as you moved on in your sermon, you made a comment that I wrote down and put a question mark next to.
Okay.
And I quote, "Blind faith is my pet peeve."
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
Well, there's no need to be blind faith. You have reasonable faith. People that don't... I question everything. Now, I don't mean you have to understand everything. You don't have to understand everything.
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, I know. We want to square the circle in our minds, but sometimes, God's playing 3D chess and we're playing rock and stick. and we can't keep up with it, and that's okay. But that's why knowledge of Scripture is so important. And like I said, it has nothing to do with being a deep theologian. It's just knowing the promises of God, and that gets us through in life. And it's not blind faith, because that's usually uninformed faith. It's usually the folks that don't read Scripture, rarely go to church, but they'll say, I believe. Well, why? And then they're easily knocked off their pins. Bad things happen. They blame God, shake their fists, say it's God's fault. How can a loving God take my dog, my grandmother, my child? Read the book. He didn't take anything. He lived in a fallen world and he died. And so I've talked about that before. You can't blame God for your ignorance. So that's why blind faith is a pet peeve of mine.
Okay. Your biggest one.
Pretty much.
Just want to verify.
That and, Yankee fans, but that's baseball seasons.
All right, so and this is where your sermon kind of tied back to the second question.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it went off the rails. Go ahead.
No, it was another good one. Another home run.
Oh, no, we won't go that far.
So, I think it ties back, like I was saying earlier, into the second question we had today about, action.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, how do you balance faith versus action? And I thought about this question a little bit, and I would like to rephrase it as kind of how do you balance prayer versus action versus going out and being a change? How do you balance sitting on your butt on the couch and saying, Lord, help, versus I'm just going to go do it? Where should you have gumption? Where should you not? How do you balance that?
Good question. Once again, it's always case by case. You can't sit on the side of the road and say, gee, I wish somebody would stop that mugging from occurring. Then you're the one that's supposed to intervene. However, show up, run over people with your car. I only did that once. If it's about changing somebody's nature, you're pretty much just stuck praying for them and loving them. You can't do anything. If it's an actual action thing, there ought to be somebody that does X, Y, or Z. Then chances are, if you see it, you're probably called to be part of the answer. Not the whole answer. No one ever goes into anything by themselves. Not supposed to. God sent people 2 by 2. He didn't send anyone out by themselves. But you're called to be part of the answer to begin to develop that. And so as I talked about a young lady that wanted to do a halfway house for battered women, because she was one. I said, that's great. Who's your partner? I don't have one. You got to have one. Well, no, God's calling me to do this. Well, God didn't call me to do this alone. And how it didn't work out. So, but it's the beginning of the process. Who else is like-minded out there that will partner with me? You just have to work the process. Probably not calling you to just jump up and fix it, whatever it is. That's almost never. I'm assuming you're talking about issues that are, excuse me, either injustices or people who are in crises. And you pray and you say, what can I do to help so-and-so? What can I do to stop this injustice? Those are the two things that I think about that people pray looking for direction the most. And
yeah,
like I said,
and where you're really vexed about how much action to take with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You hear about a friend who's going through a real time, and you're like, oh man, I should do something. And it's like, should I?
Well, it never hurts to call somebody and tell them you're thinking of them. You don't even have to bring up the issue. It takes you 15 seconds because 80% of phone calls go to voicemail. So you can text them or phone call them and say, hey, I'm thinking of you. You would be surprised how I've received texts like that and what it's meant to me going through difficult times. We like to be thought of. Then we feel less isolated and alone. If there's anything you need, let me know. And I never even responded, but it was just grateful to have that. And I told the person later. That meant a lot to me. So, but I don't ask for help, so I wasn't going to let them know.
Well, okay. All right. No, I enjoyed the sermon.
Thank you.
Because it was you've had two sermons that I can remember that talked about how important our concentration is and our thoughts are and what we focus on. And this was one of them where it was just a great reminder that, I mean, because you really believe, and you're making me believe, like, what I think about is where I'm going to go.
Exactly. I can't stress that enough. It is so as you think, so as you do. You may be wrong, but you still are giving it your best shot. And then hopefully if you find out you're wrong, then you change course and you go in another direction. But by putting your mind, your thoughts, and your heart into something is like kind of going all in on life. If you kind of are drifting, chances are you're going to drift towards negative thoughts. That's just how the human condition is. I don't know anyone that just kind of drifts towards confidence. I just don't know. Maybe you know somebody. Maybe somebody out there wants to say, I drifted towards confidence. I was sitting on a curb one day. Or, sorry.
I'd like to know who you saw in your mind's eye while you were making that voice. There's somebody sitting in a pew on Sunday that you were thinking about. If there anyone
over the age of 60 that used to watch the Jackie Gleason show, they know exactly who I was.
It was a generational thing.
Yeah.
I just missed it.
Yeah. You missed it, and maybe your parents missed it too. But
okay. Well, I'm looking forward to next Sunday. You're going to give me the sermon title?
We're going to be, yes.
Mr. Evasive.
Stop complaining.
Oh, yeah. All right.
That's the sermon title.
I like it.
That's quitting to the point, baby. So,
okay. All right. Well, that's all I got for you today.
Thank you, and we'll be better at this. We got away from us. We apologize.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Send your questions to me. Alexander M. as in Michael .Berlin, like the city, @gmail.com. Thanks for listening to Kurt and I. Have a wonderful day.
God bless you. Bye.